Welcome! My name is Corinne and I'm a registered dietitian at the Life Center. Today's presentation is called Healthy Eating, Carb Counting for Diabetes. We'll be reviewing some meal planning skills for better blood sugars. Of course, we cannot talk about healthy eating without mentioning the plate method. Using this My Plate style of eating can help ensure that you're getting a good balance of nutrition. Ideally, we want at least 3 food groups at a meal, and we definitely want one of those food groups to be vegetables or fruit. Let's go over some of the benefits of each food group. Grains and starches. Choosing whole grains can be an excellent way to get more fiber in your diet. Also included in this category are starches like potatoes, corn, and beans. Beans are one of the best starch choices, especially for blood sugar control, due to their higher protein and higher fiber content. Fruits are the perfect thing to add a little natural sweetness to your day. They can provide us with some extra vitamins and minerals like vitamin C and potassium, and we can't forget about fiber. As we all know, dairy products are our main source of calcium for healthy bones. Of course, if you're lactose intolerant, don't feel like you have to drink regular milk. You can certainly have a lactose-free milk like Lactaid, or you can go for a plant-based milk alternative like almond milk, soy milk, cashew milk, rice milk, so on and so forth. Proteins are very important as they're an essential building block for our bodies to heal, maintain our muscles, and maintain all of the tissues in our body. Proteins can include meats, eggs, seafood, and there's even protein in dairy, especially cottage cheese and Greek yogurt. Of course, we can't forget the meatless proteins. You can get protein from plant-based sources like soybeans, veggie burgers, tofu, so on and so forth. There's also plenty of protein in beans and lentils, but we gotta remember, they also fall in the starch category. Veggies are one of the most neglected food groups, but they're arguably one of the most important. Veggies are where we can get tons of vitamins, minerals, fiber, and other nutrients that can promote a long, healthy life. Non-starchy veggies are great for blood sugar control. Of course, don't limit yourself to just carrots and celery. There's tons of veggies to choose from, and with different methods of cooking and different seasonings, you may find a new favorite. Fats are another thing that are essential for our body's everyday functions. However, eating too much of these can make it a bit more difficult to manage our weight. Some fats are more healthy than others, so aim to get your fats from healthy sources like oils instead of butter, and other plant-based sources like nuts and avocados. And when it comes to animal products, the best source of fat is fatty fish like salmon. And what about sweets? Well, of course, we can't forget the sweet treats we all enjoy. Of course, these can be eaten in moderation. Think few and far between. Eating these in large amounts or very often can be pretty hard on blood sugar control. Take a look at some of the recommended portions. It may be a little smaller than what some of us are used to. And when it comes to drinks, water is king. Of course, you can include milk and you can include sugar-free drinks at meals instead of water if you want. What we want to do is try and avoid sodas, juices, and other sugary drinks that tend to make blood sugar spike very high very quickly. So now that we've covered the basics of balanced meals, let's tackle the main aspect of eating for blood sugars: carbs. What are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates, or carbs for short, are a main source of energy in our diet. However, they're also the type of food that can raise blood sugar. Carbs in themselves aren't good or bad. It's really the portion size that can draw the line between healthy and unhealthy for blood sugars. This is why we count carbs, so that people with diabetes can understand the right amount of carbs to eat in order to have a better handle on their blood sugar. Carb counting is especially useful for people who take insulin. There are 3 forms of carbs in our diets. This includes sugars, starches, and fibers. Out of these, we need to pay the closest attention to sugars and starches. Fibers are more helpful than the other 2, since fiber can help reduce the blood sugar impact of a food. All right, so now that we know what carbs are, we need to know where we find them. So which food groups have carbs? Grains and starches. This includes whole grains. Fruits have carbs, and that is because of their natural sugar content. Some dairy products, such as milk and yogurt, that's because they have lactose, which is a natural sugar. And then, of course, if something has added sugars in it, it will have carbs for sure. So that includes desserts, it includes sugary drinks, and then sweet toppings that we may add on things like honey or jelly. So which food groups are low in carbs? What can I eat that won't raise my blood sugar at all? So foods that don't raise blood sugar include proteins, some other dairy products like cottage cheese and cheese. This is because most of the lactose was removed in the process of making those. Our fats are quite low in carbs, so that includes like nuts, peanut butter, oils, avocado, and then non-starchy veggies, which we had talked about earlier as being one of the most important parts of your meal. Well, they don't raise blood sugar either. So let's look at building a carb-balanced meal. If we think back to the plate method we discussed earlier, we can see that these foods are pretty evenly distributed on the plate. We want a good mix of carb foods and non-carb foods at mealtime. Okay, now that we know which foods have carbs, we need to learn how to count them. The amount of carbs recommended per meal can vary from person to person, depending on activity level and body size. Another important thing to know is that there's 2 ways of counting carbs, either using carb servings, sometimes you can hear it called carb choices, or using grams of carbs. One thing that will be important to remember if you're learning to count carbs is that 1 carb serving is any amount of a food that equals 15 grams of carbs. A general goal for most people with diabetes would be about 3 to 4 carb servings per meal, aka 45 to 60 grams of carbs. So here's some examples of what equals 1 carb serving. It may be a little smaller than you think, but remember, you have a budget, right? You can spend maybe 3 to 4 carb servings at your meal. If you're a tall, active guy, you might even have a bigger budget than that. So let's take a look at some of these portion sizes. We've got rice and pasta, which are a 1/3 cup portion. Potatoes, corn, beans, peas, oatmeal. These are all a 1/2 cup portion. Bread, 1 slice. Tortillas, 1 6-inch tortilla. Unsweetened cold cereal. So by unsweetened, I mean like plain Cheerios, Chex cereal, Kix cereal, plain Rice Krispies, plain Corn Flakes. So these would be 3/4 of a cup for one carb serving. We have our dairy, so milk and yogurt being the dairy products that we need to pay closest attention to because they're the ones that have carbs. Milk, one carb serving is 1 cup. That includes, any percent. It could be skim, 1%, 2%, or whole. It's all got the same amount of carbs. And even lactose-free milk still contains carbs, same amount. 1 container of light yogurt would be 1 carb serving. Now, if it's not light yogurt, if it's like the regular Yoplait yogurt in the red label container, that will be more than 1 carb serving. So if you're trying to save your carbs, trying to be a little budget friendly, I would go for the light yogurt. And then fruits, we know they have natural sugars, so they have carbs. So 1 carb serving for fruit would be about a tennis ball size piece of fruit. So a tennis ball size apple or orange or peach or nectarine, pear, whatever it may be. Or it might be roughly a cup of chopped fruit or a cup of berries. And this varies slightly depending on the fruit that we're talking about, but in general, 1 cup will get you pretty close. For bananas, bananas are pretty big fruit in general. So if you are purchasing a large banana, we gotta know, only about half of it would equal 1 carb serving. When it comes to our sweets, we have a little bit less bang for our buck portion size wise. So 1 carb serving of honey or sugar or jelly, that's only 1 tablespoon. Ice cream, you can sometimes get away with about a half a cup. The more flavorful the ice cream gets, the more little extras that are in there, little pieces of chocolate and whatever, that number is going to change. So 2 small Chips Ahoy chocolate chip cookies, those are pretty small. That would be 1 carb serving, or 2 regular Oreos. So we can learn about the carb content of foods by reading the nutrition label. So let's say you have a frozen dinner, you want to carb count it, you don't know exactly how many pieces of potatoes are in there, you don't really know exactly how much meat, you don't know how much of anything's really in there. So what we can do, we can look at the nutrition label in order to get an idea of what we're dealing with. So the 2 most important lines to look at are the serving size line and the total carbohydrate line. Now you see this column way over on the right where it has percents. We need to ignore this. It is not relevant for what we're learning. We only want to look at the grams of total carbohydrate. So what we can do is we remember 1 carb serving is equal to 15 grams. So I need to do a little bit of math, and I have a chart here to help me out. So I know 1 carb serving is equal to 15 grams, 2 carb servings is equal to 30 grams, 3 carb servings is equal to 45 grams, so on and so forth. So 1 cup of this food, this macaroni and cheese label, is 31 grams of carbs, which puts me pretty much right at the 2 carb servings amount. Of course, I like to reference this chart rather than having to, do some long division. This would be a great thing to have handy and glance at, or just do some mental math and divide by 15. So 1 cup gives us 2 carb servings for this mac and cheese. Now let's look at an example of a meal on a 3 carb serving budget. So for this meal, we chose 3 foods: a pork chop, broccoli, and brown rice. The pork chop is low carb, so we don't need to count it. The broccoli is low carb, so we don't need to count it. The rice does have carbs, so we're going to choose to spend all 3 of our carb servings on it. Now, 1 carb serving of rice is 1/3 of a cup. So in order to spend all 3 carb servings on the brown rice, we can have 1 cup, right? Because 3 of 1/3 of a cup is 1 full cup. Now let's try this on a 4-carb meal. So this meal is a turkey sandwich, a yogurt container, and an orange. So for the sandwich, the only source of carbs we're getting is the bread. So we know 1 slice of bread is roughly equal to 1 carb serving, and we've got 2 slices of bread here. So we are spending 2 out of our 4 carb servings on the turkey sandwich. Remember the turkey, the lettuce, the cheese, maybe we got mustard mayo. Those are all low carb. They do not count. Now, we're also going to have a small orange with this. So tennis ball size orange, that's 1 more carb serving. And then I'll throw a container of light yogurt on the side. There's my last carb serving, and that brings us up to our total of 4 carb servings at this meal. It can be really easy to go over your carb budget by having a sugary drink or a side dish that has carbs. So watch out for regular soda, which has almost 3 carb servings per can, meaning you'll be spending almost your whole meal's worth of carbs on your drink. Diet soda has 0 carb servings and won't raise your blood sugar, so it could be a good alternative if you still really want to have soda at this meal. Here's another example. Maybe we can switch out our side of French fries and have a side salad instead. Much healthier option and significantly lower in carbs. And here we have some more meal ideas that fit a 3 to 4 carb serving budget. All of the foods that are underlined are carb foods. So maybe for breakfast I could have 2 eggs, 2 pieces of toast with a little bit of butter, a little bit of margarine on there, and then 1 orange. So I'm getting carbs from the toast and the orange, but not from the eggs or the butter. I could have a cup of oatmeal with some berries in there and some nuts. So for that meal, I'm getting carbs from the oatmeal and the berries, but none from the nuts. Here's some lunch examples. Let's see, we could do a burrito bowl. That sounds pretty good. So we have some diced chicken, no carbs in there, no need to count. And then we're going to add 1/3 cup of brown rice. There's 1 carb serving there. 1/2 cup of beans. There's a 2nd carb serving. We'll put in some other low carb extras in there like shredded lettuce, salsa, or hot sauce, or maybe a little shredded cheese. No carbs in those. But then if I add a cup of 1% milk to that, then I'm up to 3 carb servings for that meal. And that works out perfectly fine. Here's some dinner examples. Let's say it's Taco Tuesday. So maybe I'll have 2 tacos on small corn tortillas. So 6-inch corn tortillas. And I'll add, maybe 1/3 cup of cooked black beans. So I'm getting carbs from those 2 items. But if I have, let's say these are chicken tacos, I'm getting no carbs in there. I'm not getting carbs from the cheese. I'm not getting carbs from the avocado or the salsa or the coleslaw mix I'm adding to the side. So that's about 3 carb servings, 2 from the tortillas and about 1, a little less, from the beans. Here's some snack ideas. For snacks, let's try to stick to less than 30 grams so that blood sugar doesn't go too high between meals. So remember, 30 grams of carbs is 2 carb servings. Thank you for joining me today. If you want to learn more about carb counting, you can call the Life Center to make an appointment with a registered dietitian. Always remember that healthy eating starts with your plate.